Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm happy to report that my 2025 resolution has already come true. I am a mermaid. Hi, I'm Trey.
Is that like a resolution or a wish?
Yes.
I love it. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm joined by my co host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
That would be me. Hello and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's 2025. Can you believe that?
I wrote the date for the first time the other day and I was like, what is this? What is this happening?
I truthfully, I can't believe it, but it's also the start of our what? Our fourth year doing this podcast.
I never thought we would say that. That's so cool.
It's fantastic. It is so great to be here. We did do just a mini plug here. We did do a year in review episode, kind of a recap of 2024 as our last episode. So if you want to hear us talk about our guests, hear all those things, please go check out the episode before this one for a live talk through of that. But
And that's only available on Facebook and YouTube right now.
yes, thank you for that. But I'm also really excited because our first guest of 2025, I'm so excited to have her on. Emily, would you do us the honors and introduce our fantastic musical guest today?
Yes, I've been waiting for this for, I don't know, probably a month or more now. So I'm very excited to introduce Kristen Baum DeBeasi. Oh, I almost messed that up. Kristen is known for being a poet and a writer and a composer, very accomplished, but also she's one of the brainchildren behind the Fairy Tale magazine, which is another thing I'm really excited to talk about. So, welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, Trey, what's in a wish? What's in a wish? I want to know.
Okay, I've quoted this before, but I will say it again. I will quote Aggie Cromwell from Halloween Town, and it is, the secret to magic is thinking of what you want and then letting yourself have it. So if you want to become a mermaid, congratulations, you're a mermaid.
That's awesome. Yes. And I have always wanted to go to the mermaid parade that they do at Coney Island. So I do that. Yeah.
Okay, now I've never heard of the mermaid parade. What is that?
Oh, it is like costume goodness. And
That
yes,
sounds awesome.
yes, everybody goes like totally in costume and like mermaid theme approved, so there are plenty of king tritons and lots of mermaids and, probably everything under the sea that you can imagine. So, yes.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. Yes, you do. Yes. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I imagine that is something that happens in the warmer weather.
I think so because I've seen the shirtless thing. So I'm pretty sure, yes, we are not talking polar mermaids.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a mermaid with a winter coat.
That would be amazing. That would be more Selkie, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Probably. And I think that would be like the polar plunge challenge, but with mermaids.
Oh, I'm interested.
I bet they'd win. That would be hard to beat as a human.
I think so. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So Kristen, one thing whenever your name popped up and we started doing the research, one of the things that I gravitated towards was your love of music. But I also started to notice that you are a very multifaceted person. So whenever we have someone that is accomplished in so many different artistic areas, I like to start by asking, how did you get into art, and which art form did you start with?
Oh. All the way back?
Yeah.
All the art forms.
All the art forms, all the time. I've tried out everything. I'm happy to report that I'm no longer trying to make jewelry. Not a good idea. Yes, yeah.
I love that you did try it, though.
Yes, I did try it. And I went to a class with a friend and she's like, you're really good at this. And she's like, you should do some more. And I'm like, nope. So, yes, I just didn't have the interest in it. So the one thing I probably tried out the earliest and the most often. Kind of I'm like the planets. I keep like spinning and spinning and going around and around and touching things, but in a slightly different way every time.
Mhm.
So I would say it probably was writing, and I'm probably driven most by story. And that story can be in the form of like manuscripts for books, or it could be poetry, or it could be fairy tale, like straight up, right straight into fairy tale realm, or it could also be music. But the thing that kind of organizes all of that for me is story and fairy tale. So yeah, yeah, I just geek on all of that sort of stuff.
Then I gotta know what's the fairy tale that you go back to the most often?
Oh man. Um, okay, so what would I say? Red Riding Hood, of course, and I collect like Red Riding Hood art.
Ooh,
So
oh.
yeah, yeah. So I've got one where she's holding the wolf in the palm of her hand. I've got another one where her hair is in the shape of a wolf. So
Ooh.
lots of people are like, "Where's the wolf?" And I'm like, "You gotta look for it." So yes, yeah. So I've got some too that the wolf is back behind, and it's kind of watercolory and gorgeous. And we get a new one. It's being sent from the UK right now, so I'm super excited for that. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
that sounds fabulous. I want to see some of this. Also, like, I'm also drawn to Red Riding Hood.
Yes. Because
Yeah.
why? Why?
Um, well, I'm a big fan of capes and cloaks, so there's that. That's
That's a
one
real
aspect.
yeah, that's a fantastic reason. Also, she
Mhm.
kind of is a final girl, right?
She's a what girl? I'm sorry.
A final girl. Like she survives in
Oh yeah,
most of the Red Riding Hood stories, except for the one where like, and then she got ate up. Boom, done. You know. Right.
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, she's not one of the ones that like melted in the end or got eaten or yes, something like that. Yeah, I love that she survives.
Yeah.
Um, it's a little bit scary, but it's not so scary that like I couldn't handle it as a kid. So
Mhm.
I feel like that made it a positive, at least back then. It has kind of a thrill to it.
Right, yes. And I mean, fairy tales kind of teach us, through time, as kids we gravitate towards the ones where we're like, I've got to figure this thing out. How do I survive, right? Or like the handless maiden is teaching you, kind of how to go out into the world and trust that you will be taken care of and things like that. The 12 dancing princesses. Oh, okay, I'll stop. Okay, those are probably my top 3 though. Yeah. Yeah.
I love the dancing princesses. I would have to say it's the Snow Queen. Um, oh gosh, Snow Queen, the Little Mermaid, and the Nightingale, where the king opts to have like an automaton bird
Oh
instead
yeah.
of the actual bird itself.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I love that story.
Oh, that's fascinating. Have you figured out why?
No, um,
It's about singing, though, isn't it?
it is, and what comes to mind is kind of it will relate later because I want to get into your the piece that you have on your YouTube where you are speaking the text. Oh, what is that poem? I wrote it down. And no one hears it.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
So what comes to mind is that poem along with that, but I don't have it fully formulated. So maybe we can dive into that a little bit later.
Oh, I love it. I'm here for all the psychotherapy we want to do.
I love that question too. Like, what is it that draws you to that fairy tale? I think those are things that we don't always ask ourselves, and that's really interesting. And I thought about it when you asked that. Like, okay, so what is it? I've never really did that deep dive.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for me, like in my fridge poems that I was building, I did a series of Red Riding Hoods, and each one at the bottom, some little like brilliant magnets like formed themselves on my refrigerator, and yes, Allison, the nightingale. We're talking about the nightingale. Yes, and it was a little kind of clockwork nightingale that the king had made instead of the real nightingale. So yes, and I do know that story. There's also Oscar Wilde's Nightingale and the Rose story, which was featured as part of the Met Sleeping Beauties costume. Yes, last spring. Well, this spring, I guess. Yes, we're still on. No, last spring. Yes. So that was a super fun
Hard to
costume
do.
couture exhibit to see. It was amazing.
That sounds amazing.
Yes. So get me back on track now. I've just gone like.
No. Well, we
Yeah,
answered what
Trey.
ours are. So I'm curious, Emily, what are your favorite fairy tales?
Yeah, that's a terrible question because I can't remember the names of them.
Oh, good.
Start
with
yeah, like Red Riding Hood. I always kind of liked Rapunzel. And there was one I did a whole thing on in college where I had to I got in trouble. It was like my very first like English 101 kind of class, and it was like we're gonna dive into literature, and I was like, yes. And then they were like, find a super obscure fairy tale and then you're gonna write about it. And I was like, cool, I get to do this essay on a fairy tale. And then I got kind of in some trouble because I kept retelling it and they didn't want that, but I ended up learning a lot from it. And now I can't remember what it was. It was kind of a bell, book, and candle kind of one, though.
Oh, that's fantastic. And if you do retellings, if you're still writing and do retellings, we would love to see you at the Fairy Tale magazine. We are all about retellings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably long gone, but I have others maybe.
Yes.
We can explore that at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you find then that you are drawn to the overall, do you watch Disney and are you like, oh, the book was better, and things like that? Or you're like, no, Grimm had it right?
It's really interesting because when you think about fairy tale, you think, about Grimm and you think about, but what came before Grimm, right? Like Grimm was kind of the first AI.
True.
Right? They were going around and they were kind of, in a way, thieving because they were tricking some people. Some people did not want to give up their fairy tales, the oral tradition, and they would use a little bit of trickery to get it out of people. And then they compiled them into books, and then they started changing the books. So unless you have the 1812 version, you might not have kind of the purest form that even they were reporting. And then you think of The Little Mermaid as a Hans Christian Andersen, and that's a literary fairy tale, right? And so it doesn't have a foundation in the oral tradition. It's something that he cooked up special, all on his own kind of thing. So I have an interesting sort of love-hate relationship with both Hans Christian Andersen and sometimes I can't help it. I do watch all of the Disney things, but I don't always super love what would I say? What Hollywood does to prop up the patriarchy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think I find that a lot in the Disney fairy tales. What they do in those fairy tales. I'm just like, oh, really? Yeah. So, I'll have a conversation one day. I'll have to channel Walt and say, listen, you're going to have to go back in time, friend.
I think it's from Snow White at the very end. They put some blocks of something on her feet that are like hot coals. I forget what it is, but there's a very, very dark, twisted thing of the revenge that they get on the evil queen. It's not, she doesn't fall off a cliff to her doom.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah. The red hot iron stilettos. Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
In Snow White, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She gets secret invite to wedding, arrives at wedding, and it's Snow White and the prince that's managed to dislodge the apple from her throat. And they fix her up with some hot iron shoes. Red hot iron shoes. Yes, Kelly Jarvis, you have got it. Yes, you're winning. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so I fully understand why they kind of do that from a Hollywood perspective, but when I look at even movies that are coming out of Japan, these adaptations of stories that have potentially some darker themes to them, they don't necessarily shy away from them, but they also know how to balance out what is directed for the kids and then what's directed for the adults so that there's a balance for both audiences and not just skewed for one.
Agree. Like Belle, right? When they did
Yes.
Belle a couple of years ago, that was just fantastic. Yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I could sit here talking about fairy tales for a long time.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
so, kind of diving into and how that transitions into your music, you said that storytelling is the thing that really drives you and like the writing process and that narrative element. I'm curious how that impacts your musical process.
Oh man, I think I'm always telling a story in my musical process. You know, whether it be like from the inspiration of a poem or whether it be like film music and I am serving story very directly there, you know, because film music can't not serve the story, you know.
Mhm.
So we're collaborators. Um, but we definitely are maybe not equal collaborators. You know, somebody's got to be like steering the ship and saying, this is, you know, the direction that we're going. Um, and this part's working for us and that part, let's keep working that until it does, you know. And Emily, you probably know that from doing costume design and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are design changes.
And there are,
We
yes.
call them that though. Anyway.
Yeah. We just call it Rev 1, Rev 2, Rev 3, Rev 13, Rev 14. Yeah. Yeah.
So you had what I guess my question is because you're so multi-talented and multifaceted, you have so many things that you've tried and so many things that you've done so well in. What is one thing that you would say you're most known for?
What one thing I'm most known for? Am I known?
Well, I guess that's yeah. I would say let's assume the answer is yes. I thought so, yes. But
That's all.
also like
Yeah.
if you were to pick one thing to put out there as this is me, this is the thing I did that most people are like know me for, or at least I know that's like the wrong question to typically ask because you are so multifaceted and multi-talented. But if you were to pick one thing,
If I were to pick one thing, I do have one cue in the Book of Eli. I did not write score. I wrote
okay,
incidental music that happens right at the end. It is piano. So people know the Book of Eli. So
yeah,
yes, right.
that's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time,
Is
actually.
it? Yes.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, Atticus Ross. And it, you know, it when it came on the scene, it did shift things a lot. You know, it was one of those things like, you know, when you look at Philip Glass's score for Kundun, that also did that. You know, there just are some scores that they come along and they're just like, everything's going to change from here on out, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, so that was one of them that did that too. So my music is playing in the library scene after he's made the whole harrowing trip, and it is on piano in the background, and it's probably like a Scarlatti kind of ape sort of piece. Yeah.
So what was that like for you? I imagine you're sitting in a theater watching it because you're part of it, and you get to hear it. Do you get to hear it for the first time in the theater, or did you know beforehand?
I knew beforehand that it was going to be in because it stayed in. You know, I
Hmm.
had done like 3 examples, and that, you know, it was probably while they were in post, probably while they were already on the final mix, and I think that's when I learned that it had stayed in and that it was possible. You know, that you get, you know, the information because they want to know, like, is it cleared? Is it clearable? And can we get it under contract? You know, so that's probably was the first big signal, and then from there, um, just learning that it did stay in was super cool. It was a really kind of exciting moment for me in, you know, the stuff that I was doing at that point in Hollywood. It was probably the biggest thing for
Cool.
me. but I also scored a Big Wave Surfer Girl movie, and that was super fun too. So I probably am known for being really diverse in my film music.
Okay.
People were very surprised at my ability to go from like one sound to another sound. And I love like Danny Elfman sort of sounds, like the
Mm-hmm.
quirky, like Oingo Boingo stuff, and like, Men in Black and stuff like that. When I first fell in love with film music, it was his score for Batman.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I can still sing that today. And I was dating this guy, and we were driving back, pretending to be in the Batmobile, going around, going
Of
Batmobile.
course. Yeah.
So yeah. So probably after this, you will understand that what I'm really truly known for is my quirkiness. So yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
When it comes to like specifically film music, or film scoring, I should say,
Mhm.
um, how do you balance composing something that's not trying to like sway the audience to feel a particular way? It's been described of your music that it's really an extension, like its own character. How do you kind of find the balance of providing the ambiance and providing maybe a commentary that's going on without swaying that audience into feeling a particular way?
Do we do that? I think it's a really interesting question, because a lot of the times what we're doing in music, the presence of music or the absence of music has the power to make people feel stuff. You
Hmm.
know, like when we're watching a horror show, we're white knuckling when the music comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, that's when somebody's going down, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So how do I do that? I really try to tune into each of the characters
Hmm.
and tap into who they are on the inside and say, how can I add like another layer to their actual character, so it feels like it is completely organic, and so it feels like it is them, it is a part of their character. Like, I've had people say to me, I understood this movie better because your music was providing subtext that I might not have gotten otherwise. So
Well, yeah, it's the difference between somebody walking down a dark hallway confidently and maybe more terrified.
yes, yes, yeah.
That makes sense. It's like I used to have this conversation with my voice instructor how music can sometimes like lead people up down a particular path, and it's always striking that balance between the action that's going on while what sorry, I can speak English, that's happening on stage or happening on screen, and then also balancing out the ambiance of what's going on. And it's trying to like that vying for power. Is it the action that's most important
Yeah.
or the music that's most important? And it's finding that balance between.
Yes, and it's deciding when to foreground the music and when to background the music. Yes.
Yeah.
And you're also deciding, if I come in here, it might be melodramatic, but if I come in over here, then it won't be melodramatic. It will be like, responding to something rather than trying to add subtext where you don't need to add subtext. Yeah, if you watched a horror film on mute, it's totally, yes, the truth found. Yes, yes, it's totally different if you're watching it on mute. Yeah.
I I might be able to watch a horror film if I watch it on mute then.
Right.
Just throwing that out there. Me and
Right.
horror films, mm-mm, no
I
thanks.
know, not friends, right? Yes,
Nope.
yeah. The interesting thing is, when I did first go to Hollywood, I got to work with Christopher Young, who,
Mm.
has historically been known as the horror king, as in terms of scoring, and did The Fly and did Drag Me to Hell, and all kinds of really big stuff. They got the one with Pinhead in it, What's Your
Hmm.
Pleasure and stuff, and all of those things. And oh, someone is, yes, they're with you,
They're agreeing with you, Trey.
Yeah, they're agreeing with you, Trey. Yes. So it's an interesting thing because I was not 100% in love with horror, but then being able to go and see it happening and see kind of pull back the curtain and see the little man behind the curtain, it makes it different. It makes it not such a scary endeavor. So Trey, we can watch horror films together. You might all of a sudden be like, hey, these are no problem.
I think it really goes back to, not to like make anybody my armchair therapist, but I think it comes back to when I was 9. No, when I was 7. My dad asked me to watch Child's Play with him, and that has ever since then just no thanks.
That's a scar.
That's a scar. That's not going away.
Yeah.
I can see how it'd be different behind the scenes though, because you're like creating it.
Right.
You're like part of it.
Right.
And you have that like distinguishment. It's a little easier to distinguish like this is a reality, but this is a reality I'm creating versus it's a reality that's just happening.
Yes, this one is scripted, and it's very scripted, and so we're building the music scene by scene, and so we're never like sitting and watching the whole thing and terrifying ourselves every time. We're just looking at this particular scene and where's the point where we're going to hit and frighten everyone, where do we make them laugh so that we know we've got them in the palm of our hand so that we can do the hit and scare everybody and make them jump.
That laugh. That was awesome.
I want to go back also, still kind of with the film score. You said a few minutes ago that people have commented how you are able to shift between different genres and still be able to score so effectively. When I've been listening to your music, both art songs, some of your film score offerings, typically I can pick out like one or two things that are a composer's like musical signature.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find yours.
Oh.
So you are truly a chameleon when it comes to your music. So I'll ask you, what are some things that people can listen for to help identify that it's a piece of yours they're listening to?
That is such a good question. What are my tells? I'm not sure I can answer that yet. I think it might take another 20 years and it'll be like, oh, she does that thing all the time. Oh man, that's her.
Right. Or like, that's one of those things where I feel like later you'll have some people who are like, oh yeah, we've studied Kristen's work for so long, we can pick it out. Because they might be, you're the one doing it, so it just feels like part of you, versus another audience would be able to pick out those little things.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens with writing and poetry and other things like that too. Like the poet themselves may not, like it's possible that Emily Dickinson didn't realize that she was the poet she was.
Right. Yes.
But now that we've studied her and studied her and studied her, we see,
Yes, we see the dashes that she put into all of, and she was, I think she was really, really passionate about what she would and would not do, and I think that probably is similar for me. Like I did one time have to write a death metal song and I was so resistant to it. I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this. And it was right at the end of this film called Stiffs on the Green. And it was about people dying on golf courses. So it was kind of a very funny horror film.
Okay.
Very, very campy. And so I had this death metal, I called it Death Metal Wedge. And I wrote the lyrics and I also wrote the music. And I said, okay, since I don't want to do this, I'm going to give myself one day to do it. I'm doing it all in one day. And so like, of course, in my head, I'm working it out. I'm going to do this first, and then it will go into this, and then there'll be this verse. And then, because song form, you can't do that. You guys know that, right? Because you used to make up songs while you were working.
Oh, she knows.
She knows the deep lore.
sequel.
no.
Yes,
Yes.
add more lore. That's what we all stay in fairy tales, right? Yes, yeah. So you know that you can make up songs, just being funny, and
Mhm.
and sometimes it works. And so I did that. And my husband also is a film composer, music editor, and he graciously agreed to drink a lot of milk. He's allergic to dairy. He drank a lot of milk, and he sang the lyrics to this thing, Death Metal Wedge. Yes.
Oh
So,
man.
yes, yeah, it's super, super fun. I'm gonna have to add it to my SoundCloud. I'll let you guys know. I'll add it to my SoundCloud because it totally cracks people up. And it starts with the little twinkle bells and then it goes rah. So yeah.
And now he has this memory as well.
Exactly. Yes.
I love that.
New theme for the fairy tale magazine. Yes. Death metal fairy tales. That sounds fun. It sounds a little kind of gloop and
Mhm.
gothy, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but I can also see a photo shoot of like taking that and make it very, very, very death metal for some of these. I actually saw an adaptation of Into the Woods where they kind of modernized some of the characters into like the early 2000s, and they gave Little Red like these very punk rock outfits
Oh yeah.
whenever she gets into Act Two. So she goes from being, I think, like I want to say a Girl Scout in Act One, and then comes back in Act Two, and she is so much more grunge and so much more like death metal. She's wearing the cloak of the wolf at this point. Sorry to spoil the musical for anybody for a musical that's been out for over 30 years, but you're welcome.
Fantastic. I'm gonna have to find that. I will need to know what the title is. Yes.
Yes. I'll find the theater and I'll send it to you.
Yes, please.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The death metal thing reminds me of recently in on the show Rings of Power. I don't want to, by the way, to
No
our
spoilers.
audience.
I know. Yeah.
What's that?
No spoilers.
No spoilers, but there is Barry McCreary brought in, I can't remember who it was, to do some death metal in the toward the end of the second season.
Awesome.
And I remember hearing that this was going to happen, and I was like, don't wreck Lord of the Rings for me. But you know what? Well, I saw it then, and it didn't. And it actually was kind of like, all right, I get it.
I could see it being kind of cool for like, kind of a reframe on My Precious. My Precious. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it would help me, because that
Yeah.
was not my favorite. Gollum was not my favorite.
Mm-mm.
I think I put the book down at that point and I was just like, yeah, I do not groove on this stuff.
Yeah, it was during a war scene, and it was with large it was with, I want to say it was with like large cave troll kind of beasts that
Oh,
were
that's
attacking. So it was fitting, and it just fit because if music is really good, it like meshes so well with the scene, and it just becomes part of it instead of working against it, and it really did work for it, and it was something I didn't expect.
Yeah, death metal
Um,
really works heavily for war. And then, like in the Gladiator, when they've got that first war scene and he says, release hell, you get all of that kind of battle music. And then you pull the focus and you pull the camera, and the cinematography says, we're pulling out and we're giving a wide shot of like the devastation of what war really is. And then the music does the same thing and it just kind of floats there. And it just says, just look, just take a look at what's happening. It's incredible. Music is so powerful. So we may be affected by it, whether we know we're being affected by it or not. It's just, yeah, it's
mhm.
amazing.
I would love to hear how many people watched Rings of Power and didn't even notice that the death metal was in there because they were just involved in the scene, and how it probably made you feel that certain way, but you didn't realize that that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've had piano students back in my earlier days. I taught piano,
Mhm.
and I had a student come in and say I went and saw this movie. I said, how was the music? There was no music. He said, there was no music. I said, I assure you there was music. I want you to listen next time. But that really is the ultimate goal of like a composer, is for it to be so well integrated that you do not notice the music is playing. Because if you notice the music, oh, there's music, then it's problematic, you know?
Yeah, unless it's intentional, like a musical within
Right.
it, something like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Allison, I'm glad. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Allison said, "This is news to me."
Yes.
So I want to know now if there are any, other than like silent films, are there films out there without music? Do you know of any?
Yes. No Country for Old Men did their emotionality through cinematography and set design, I believe, rather than music. And so I think they reserved it just to the very, very, very end.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And so that whole thing was done, all the tension, I mean, that was kind of a scary movie, you know? It was a disturbing movie, and they were able to accomplish it through light and through what they did with sets and stuff. Just really amazing. What
Huh.
else? Let's see. Patton only has 20 minutes of music in it. Um, yeah, old family favorite. Um, right. Yeah. So there aren't very many that don't have a lot of music. I did one for Vishal Masbat, and he did In the Land of Lost Angels, and it had no music until like the very, very end.
Hmm.
So, but he decided I need just a little bit of commentary here, you know.
Fascinating.
I I'm sorry, I'm processing, but this is I love I love that music is able to have this level of like detail to it. And it like you said, if you notice that it's happening, take it back and let's workshop it. To that extent, um, when I was listening to some of your art songs, the one piece I kept going back to because I kept finding something new every single time that I was listening to it, and it was so good that I wound up sending it to a voice instructor that I am still friends with on Facebook. Was Ravenous. I want to say how much I love this piece, not only for the text that's in it, but I love what you're doing musically. Um, for me, not to spoil anything or try to convince anybody in a particular way, there are so many points in which you can really start to feel the hunger of the singer throughout that because of what's happening underneath it. The texture changes, the what you're playing as far as the accompaniment underneath the voice changes consistently. And every time it changed, it felt like I was hungry because I would feel hungry for something else and it would cause my mood to shift kind of without really any rhyme or reason to it. It wasn't so fluid, and I was like, this is so good. Not to mention the vocal line is so well done. So I really just want to say a kudos for that of how well composed that song is.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I was so thrilled to be able to do it. And we actually premiered it here in January of last year at Song Slam. And it just was a really very fun collaboration. Shout out to Sally Rosen-Kindred, who wrote the poem. And she did this fantastic, like, I'm such a fan that the very first time I saw her in any of my like fairy tale school stuff or anything, I just fangirled all over her. I'm like, oh my God, Sally! Woo! And she was like, who's this person? But she's super, super gracious. And I did reach out to her and say, you know, can I set these things as, you know, art songs and stuff like that? So it was really exciting. And that piece, I wrote a lot during the pandemic. I just, you know, like we all had a little bit of free time and had this kind of like, whoa, okay, what do I do now? Right. Which may be a part of how this podcast was born. Um, you know, so it was that kind of thing. So I'd done a couple of piano solos, finished some of the things that I had discarded a few years earlier, and it was that point where I was kind of casting about looking for things. That's how the fridge poems came about, and a lot of my art songs were kind of born during that period. So yeah, so that is a favorite of mine, and it is the poem itself is about a moment of transformation, right?
Mhm.
So and in the fairy tale that underpins it, the mother turns the girl into a raven because she doesn't like how she's behaving or something like that. And so it is kind of like the embodiment of like, what do I do when my mom hates me or doesn't like who I am or whatever? And, kind of um, how do I come into this place of newness and how do I embrace who I truly am? So I just find that it's so very resonant for me and probably for a lot of people. We've probably all had moments where we have transformed from what we were and what we thought we were into, you know, a kind of a different space as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. It. I don't know. I think I fangirled enough over that song, but I really loved it so much.
That's awesome. Sally, I hope you heard that.
um, I along the lines of writing, I also want to make sure that we give highlight to a magazine that you are one of the brainchildren for. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I would love to. I don't feel like I'm the brainchild for it, but I'm going to be
Okay.
like brainchild and carrying it forward. So
Okay.
Kate Wolford started this as she was a university lecturer, and in 2006 she said, people love fairy tales. I would like to do fairy tale retellings. Let's have a contest where we'll call it Diamonds and Toads, which is another fairy tale where two sisters, one good, one bad, go to a well. Of course, the good one gets sent always the first, right? Because we want to knock her off or we want, something bad to happen to her, so we send her off first. And she gets some sort of a thing that's considered a boon, right? Although I would have to say that being blessed to every time you speak, a diamond falls out of your mouth. I don't know. Is that a boon? Ouch. You know?
Break a tooth that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the other girl, the other girl gets, she's like, I'm not drawing water for you. Draw your own water, And so she's like, okay, you can have snakes and toads coming out of your mouth, And so, yeah, totally lost my train of thought because I got so geeked on that fairy tale.
No, I love it. So you didn't start it, but you're carrying the torch forward, you said.
Yes, yes. Okay, fairy tale magazine. Focus.
It's like us.
Yes.
Totally.
So Kate had this idea, and she did it with her college students at first. And they had a contest and did fairy tale retellings. And she decided that she wanted to do this going forward, and so she did in several iterations. So she called it Diamonds and Toads at first, and then when she took it to the web, she decided to call it Enchanted Conversation, and to presuppose that fairy tales are kind of an enchanted conversation that we're continually having, that we've had since we could speak, right? So since once upon a time, or since there was and there wasn't, all of those kind of precursors to the story were possible. We have had this sort of conversation going on in the world that sort of explains things, or sort of points to things that might be weird or stuff like that. And so she carried it forward with Enchanted Conversation for a number of years. And then just in 2022, she rebranded it as The Fairy Tale Magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were working on it. They had some beautiful, the ISSUU. They did issues.
Mm-hmm.
They built out of it, and they're available still. So if you want to look for them, the Fairy Tale Magazine, and look for those, you will see how glorious they were at that point. And then one of the staff had to step away. For family reasons, and so it kind of is undergoing another transformation. And a couple of years later, Kate has realized that she wants to pass the torch, and she said, in one of our extra meetings. So some of us are fairy godparents, and I'm one of them and have been for a number of years. And so we get together as fairy godparents and talk about the state of fairy godparenting. And it's actually our support community around the magazine. And so we pay a small amount of dues each year, and that supports, keeping the website up and running and doing the things that we need to. So we pay all of our authors and stuff like that. And so she put it out in the fairy godparents meeting that she was going to be stopping being the editor-in-chief, so that she could tend to grandbabies and just, have a little bit of fun, And I immediately, I think my fingers may have animated themselves. And I wrote to her and I said, I just have to say, I see myself as the editor-in-chief and blah, blah, blah. And this is what I'd like to do. And so I just laid out this whole big, grand scheme of things. And she's, had a number of people respond, and she wrote to me like the next week and said, okay, you can be the editor-in-chief going forward. It's so great. I agree, Allison. It's so great and so inspiring. Yes. So one of the things that we do in our fairy godparents meeting is we give ourselves permission to wear flower crowns. And we go and we dress up. Sometimes, it's not all women. There are men that are a part of the club too, and they wear, hats. We have mushroom hats, we have witch hats, we have all the hats.
I love this so much.
It's so good. Yes. So the early deadline for joining the the club that goes along with it is January 15th.
Oh, okay.
Get it on that early if you want. Yes.
It's in 2 days.
Yes. Yeah. 2 days. So we are stopping with our early renewals. And then on that same day, we start our submissions for our Sleeping Beauty. Yes. Hashtag all the hats.
Hashtag all the hats. I'm all over this hashtag. I love it.
Hats. Yes. And I have to just shout out because Kelly Jarvis is one of our contributing writers.
Okay.
And she has graciously agreed host. Yes. Hashtag all the hats. I just love that. Yes. Kelly has graciously agreed to do interviews of authors that are doing fairy tale, like retellings and things in and around fairy tale. So we're starting to do like small author interviews. And Kelly is one of our people doing that. And Allison is also one of our fairy godparents. So I'm so excited you guys are here. And the Truth Found, I don't know you, but I bet I will after this. So
The Truth Found is my sister.
Yeah. Yay. How fun is that? I don't have a sister, so I love the idea of sisters. Definitely.
I love it when she tunes in. It's wonderful.
Yay. Yay. Okay. What else you want to know about Fairy Tale Magazine?
How I can join that club, because that sounds fantastic.
Wouldn't that be
amazing, you guys? Yes. So at this point, if you're a new member, all you need to do is buy your way in, right?
Yeah.
So it's a $55 entry fee.
Okay.
And then you are in for the year, and we do socials regularly, and we have author talks from some of the, authors that are doing fairy tale retellings. And then Sally has agreed to come on, and she is going to give us a workshop all centered around Sleeping Beauty. And so she's going to turn that on its head for us. That's coming up in February. So super exciting. Yeah.
No, I do have to ask, is this in person only, or is this virtual as well?
It's virtual, yes. So every once in a while, we have friends that tune in, even from the UK, although when we do, Lyndon is so keyed up after that she has a hard time sleeping, from what we understand. So, yeah.
I am not going to have an easy time sleeping tonight just hearing about it. So I totally, I believe this.
Yes. I probably will pull out a wand, every once in a while and bibbity bobbity,
Of course.
I can't be expected to be normal. It's just been so much work being normal all these years. I just can't do it anymore.
Right.
So, yes. It's unsustainable.
That begs the question, what is normal?
I don't know, but I've tried for it and probably failed epically because, when you get those looks, you haven't nailed it.
I think that's why I like Little Red Riding Hood so much. Because she has the guts to wear a red cape in the middle of the woods with
Yes.
scary things out there.
Yes. And if you've gotten to read any of my chapbook, The Truth Walks into a Fairy Tale, you know that color is a warning if we're paying attention.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah. So that's one of her messages. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm going to connect it back to the poem that I mentioned earlier, and we said we would get back to it, and no one hears it. So I'm going to ask a question like this. Are people intentionally not hearing it because they are trying to stick to the status quo, or are people not hearing it because they've lost the sense of joy?
Can it be a combination?
Yes, of course.
That just sounds like a swirl cake to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a combination of both those things. I think we can lose our joy. Somewhere Italo Calvino, somewhere in the middle of life, I kind of lost the plot. I lost the road. I
Mhm.
found myself in a deep, dark woods, and the losing of that joy, um, hopefully means that we come to a deeper understanding of it. To me, it is a mystery what we're even doing here as humans. Like, what are we here for? How did this happen? How did I sign up to agree to, okay, like I was a baby and I grew up. Okay, fine. I wasn't thinking about that. But, now that I'm like, starting to like, did your face just fall? Um, I'm starting to age and I'm like, okay, who said I agreed with this? Who said I signed on for this? And I realized that if I make it into my 80s, my friends that are in my 80s, they're like, okay, we've blessed it. This is amazing. But somewhere in the middle, it's just like, I don't know what this is. What's going on here? So it's a little bit of kind of both of those things. We can just lose our joy sometimes, and we just have to, I think, sit in our that could rhyme stuff. We could sit in it until we figure it out, right? Raina Maria Rilke says, live the questions so that the answers will come and you'll just live into them, at some certain point. So it just it is, can I look around and find the joy, like that building, kind of joy, like the party building over here, kind of joy. It doesn't look like that during the day. I mean, during the day it's got all those little water towers on top of it, but there's like sparkle stuff everywhere. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you say in the poem, you warble for yourself. You don't warble
Yes.
for anyone else, you warble for yourself.
Yes, alone. Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So if you find that, yeah, exactly. Yes, yes, yeah.
That was a response to Allison, who said it's kind of surprising when you realize you're actually going to grow up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the shocker, right?
Hmm.
Yes, when you realize that, oh, suddenly hormones. Yes, yeah. Oh, what? Oh, yeah.
It's
It's like,
happening.
oh,
Has it happened for us, Trey?
God, please no. I don't know.
no, it sort of does kind of in like little layers. I do that whole
Hmm.
swirling thing again, like the planets are just kind of spinning
Hmm.
out in space, but they never quite hit the same spot, over again. They
Mhm.
keep, moving and everything lines up slightly differently every time. But yeah, yeah, we just touch on it in different ways at different ages and different kind of light bulb moments.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like there's times when you get to where you can actually maybe find some comfort in the mystery, and then suddenly something changes, and you have
Yes.
to figure that out all over again, and that happens like forever.
It does. Yes. Yeah. It's like, you're like, I thought I was the butterfly. Nope. No, you're back in that tight little chrysalis thing, you gotta get out again. Yeah, it's big stuff.
Hmm. So, as far real quick, Trey, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. We do this thing sometimes where we talk over the top of each other and
Oh, I
I
love
don't
it.
want to do it. I want to make sure our listening audience can find Fairy Tale Magazine and your work as well. Can you, especially Fairy Tale Magazine, since we're on that topic right now, can you share the online? I know you've got fairytalemagazine.com.
Yes, we do.
And where else can our listeners find you?
So if they want to go into the archives, they can do enchantedconversation.com.
Okay.
Everything is archived there from the earlier. Let's see, I'm going to look at my cheat sheet over here. At fairy.tale.magazine is our brand new shiny Instagram that our new managing editor, Madeline Mertz, is creating as Kate steps back. And then you can find us on Facebook. We are the Fairy Tale Magazine on there. And we have a brand new shiny YouTube as well, which is also the Fairy Tale Magazine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Gonna have to follow that one too.
Yeah, brand new little things on there. And it's like mostly author stuff, but you'll see various things coming up. So you'll have, if you're looking to overload your TBR pile, you're going to find some good stuff.
And who isn't?
I know. Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
What are we even doing if we're not?
Yeah, we're not building houses of cards. We're building houses of books.
Please, yes.
I can support this.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Kristen, I just have to say, this hour has flown by. I have had such a great time having you on the podcast here. Would you come back, please?
I would love to.
Yeah, how is an hour gone? I'm sorry.
It went really fast. Well, I think at first it was me with my tech issues, so it's, yeah. But
still, I feel like we just breezed through this and we hardly touched on
all the things.
All the things, right.
Yes.
We have to do a part 2 or part 3 and 4 and 7.
Sounds totally fun. And I'll look for you in the Fairy Godparents Club.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, before we go, I do have 2 last questions for you. First one, you are able to have lunch with anybody in the world, alive or dead. Who would it be and why?
My Grandma Moon.
Oh.
Yeah, I probably would. So Doris Virginia Moon Henry. Probably because I want to ask her. She was a pilot.
Ooh.
Yes, right? And that is so adventurous. And she and my grandfather had the old Cessnas and stuff like that. And she flew in some contests. And the family lore was always that it was in the Powder Puff Derby. And I thought it was for a really, really long time. But I could never find the record where she was listed in the Powder Puff Derby. And so I bought every single book I could about the Powder Puff Derby. And it was a women's kind of cross-country airplane contest. And I thought she had done all the things. And I was devastated, legit devastated, when I read the book. And I was like, oh, so all the things that happened to my grandma actually happened to other individual people flying in that first Powder Puff Derby. So it kind of shattered the illusion there. So I really want to go back and talk to her and say, listen, I know you were a pilot. I know you loved flying. I want to know what contest you were in. So maybe she did some local contests in Northern California. So I'd love to sit down and do that. And I never got to, when I was 10 years old, we moved across the country and I never saw her again after that. She passed away. Yeah. So I want to have a conversation with her. And also I would like to ask her to make me silver dollar pancakes again. Because I remember just a small cake. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That is a great answer.
It is.
The other question I have for you, out of all of the things that you've written, what is a line that continues to pop into your head?
There's so many. I don't know if I say the one about going to Pink's Hot Dogs and saying, make me one with everything. And they do, which is from Onomatsu, or if it's we can tell our monsters no, which is from the Truth Walks into a Fairy Tale. That's in that chapbook. We can tell our monsters no.
Oh.
I think 2 answers is acceptable.
Oh, good.
100%.
It's hard to choose.
There are no rules here.
Good, I can stop sweating now.
Well, luckily, Emily and I are the fairy godparents here, so
Yeah.
we will absolutely grant you 2 answers to that.
Thank you. That feels like a very special wish. Thank you.
We give in to whim often.
Oh, good. I think that's the best way to be in this world.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kristen, you've given great answers. You have been a fantastic guest today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It has been such a pleasure to talk to both of you. I could just keep going for 3 hours. I'm sure everyone would hate me.
No, well, we wouldn't.
But I have enjoyed it just ridiculously. Thank you both.
Thank you. We have too.
Thank you.
Well, I'll speak for myself.
Absolutely. Well,
I like that. That was fantastic. You know where you are on screen. Yes, this is great.
Well, every now and then we do this.
Yes,
Great.
yes.
oh, sorry.
You got it. Yes, it's a great podcast, you guys. Allison is going to be back for it. I love that.
Oh,
Excellent. Thank you. Yes,
Thank you,
we'll
Allison.
definitely continue.
Yes, yeah. It was a fast hour, you guys.
Crazy.
I know. Yes.
Well, as we close this episode out, we want to thank everybody for tuning in with us here today. You can find more behind the scenes content on our Patreon. Check out our website for more information. But really, thank you so much for joining us now in 2025. Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye.